reading some H.P. Lovecraft. Call of Cthulhu and other weird stories. And we're going to be drinking some tea. I haven't put a tea bag inside of the mug yet. I have this, it's upside down, oops. I have this English tea shop, organic tea, classic collection. I don't know if it's of any quality or not. It was a Christmas gift. So we're gonna try it out together. My apologies for the glare and the lights. It would help if I could get this open now, wouldn't it? Brute force. It's resorting to that. Sorry if it's loud. I'll do the audio later. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different types of tea. Now, I know I'm not bound to like every single one in here, but I'm going to pick one at random anyway, just based off of color. Because that's how I flow. Super cringe, whatever. Let's go with this pink one. Because it matches, kinda, sort of. Not really at all. Doesn't match at all. Close enough. It's a shade of light red. This is organic white tea. Comes with this cute little pyramid. It says to brew it for 1 to 2 minutes. But if you're like me and don't have any grasp on life, you let it brew for 30 minutes and then forget about it. And then you go downstairs and it's already cold. I don't know what that creaking is. It's either my dogs or it's a ghost. Either way, we have to continue. Now this tea water that I have is really hot. It's so cute. It smells very light. Oh, and it comes in a very soft, silky bag. It's one of those triangle bags. Let me see if I can fix it. Let's see. Sort of, it's like a flattened pyramid. A sad pyramid. It tried. Good enough. I don't want to crunch this up too much. I don't want it to become a powder. But what do I care? I'm gonna drink it regardless. Alright, well, let's brew this for 1 to 2 minutes, as I'm going to set that aside and I'll add some sugar to it later. I have this container of German rock sugar. I don't normally have sugar like that, that's pretentious, but it was given to me as a gift from Tijuana by a friend, also last Christmas. Otherwise I probably wouldn't be going and buying things like that. I just go and buy like Domino white sugar or whatever, I can afford on a post-college debt budget. And then we have our little teaspoon here. So, it's like turning like a chartreusey color. I don't know if you can see. I didn't fill this up all the way just in case I didn't like it, because look at this, is a huge mug. This is a freaking huge mug. Let's make some space over here. Now let's do some reading, shall we? I love the art on this. I can't tell if you can see. But alright. Turn to page 160. Not to that one. Not what the bookmark said. Why would that make sense? So let's take out this bookmark. Let's go to table of contents like smart people do and actually find out where we're supposed to go. Let's see. This table of contents, we have introduction, suggestions for further reading, a note on the text, and I apologize if I pronounce any of this incorrectly. Dagon, the statement of Randolph Carter, facts concerning the late Arthur German and his family. Nartholtep. No, Nyarlathotep. I can do words. The picture in the house. The outsider. Herbert West, reanimator. The hound. The rats in the walls. The festival. He. Cool air. And the Call of Cthulhu. Page 139. Turn to page 139. The Call of Cthulhu. Found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston. Of such great powers or beings, there may be conceivable a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps, in shapes and forms long since withdrawn, before the tide of advancing humanity, forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. Algernon Blackwood. 1. The horror in clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate to all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but some day the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality, and our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came a single glimpse of forbidden aeons, which chills me when I think of it, and maddens me when I dream of it. The glimpse, like all dread glimpses of truth, flashed out from accidental piecing together of separated things, in this case an old newspaper item and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professors, too, intended to keep silent regarding the part he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had he not sunken death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 27, with the death of my great-uncle George Camelangel, Professor Emeritus of Semiotic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Angel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions, and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witnesses said, after having been josted by a nautical-looking negro who had come from one of the Coyotacots on the precipitous hillside which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's home in William Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man was responsible for the end. At the time I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but laterally I am inclined to wonder. I more than wonder. Let's take a moment to now put some sugar in that tea and see how it tastes, and then we can return. It comes with a little red spoon. Isn't that freaking adorable? One rock or two. Let's hope that's enough, because I actually don't know. There's also something about reading the Call of Cthulhu that just makes you have an accent. I don't try to do it, but then as I'm reading it, it just kind of happens. And you feel weird. I feel a little weird, just a smidgen. Just a smidgen. Now, let's stir this up. I don't know how much sugar is in here because there's actually no real good way to gauge it. Because just kind of hope for the best. And the string fell in. Whatever. I'm dead inside anyway. Kidding. Slightly. And it's done. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, they haven't melted yet. Break up. Break up, you two. Like a bad high school relationship breakup. They're like sugar clumps at the bottom. Break up. Good enough. See how this white tea tastes. It's kind of like this murky swamp water yellow. I dig it. It tastes. You know, when someone says the word tea and you think about it in your head and you think about, you just think about the word and what it actually means. You're like, oh, tea, leaf juice. That's what it tastes like. It tastes like the thought of leaf juice. Not that it's bad, it just tastes like you would expect it to taste. It's not bad. It's not too bitter. It's not too flavorful though either. It's very plain. But to me, a lot of white teas are rather plain, which is okay. Not every white tea is, but most, for me at least. I like really, really strong flavors. So it's not a surprise to me that I'm not thrilled by it, but I like it. I would probably add some sort of flavoring to it though, even though that would kill the actual tea taste, but yellow. Oh my god, I'm so old. I'm saying it unironically now. That's what happens when you grow up and get a job and you live long enough to see memes cycle through themselves over again. Like, god, the new Death Note movie is coming out, and I'm gonna have to deal with the I'll take a potato chip and eat it memes all over again. My old body's not ready for that. I had to go through 2006 once. I can't do it again, man. Alright, well, I added some more rocks to this, so let's see if it actually, flavors it out a little more or sweetens it. Maybe I'll at least be drinking, sugar leaf juice or whatever, That's a little better. Whatever. Good enough. Let us continue. Where was I? Oh, right, I haven't left the second page, but the the chair's making weird noises. I don't like that. Let's try. I'll switch sides. Maybe it'll make a different sound. I don't know. I don't like having earplugs in while I do this. Okay. Auto adjusts light. I don't like that either. Okay, maybe whatever. As my granduncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness. And for the purpose he moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material, which I correlated, will be later published by the American Archaeological Society. But there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much adverse from shewing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring. which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then indeed I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas-relief, and the disjointed jottings, ramblings, and cuttings which I found? Had my uncle in his latter years become credulous of the most superficial impostures, I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas-relief was a rough rectangle, less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of Cubism and Futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic, regular looks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind, the bulk of these designs seems certainly to be, though my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and collections of my uncle, failed in any way to identify this particular species, or even to hint at its remotest affiliations. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, but it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. Adjusting my seat, ignore that sound. The writing accompanying the oddity was, aside from a stack of press cuttings and Professor Angel's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style, what seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulhu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. The manuscript was divided into 2 sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dream Work of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, Rhode Island, and the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LaGrasse, 121, Bayonville Street, New Orleans, L.A. at 1908, AAS MTG-NOTS on same, and Prof. Webb's account. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes, some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons, some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and the Lost Lemuria, and the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Burr and Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. The cuttings largely alluded to ultra-mental illnesses and outbreaks of group folly or mania in the spring of 1925. Let's pause again. Another sip of tea. There's a lot of funky words in this story. I have actually yet to read the Call of Cthulhu, so I thought I'd read it together, but man, there's a lot of outdated words that I don't feel totally comfortable saying. And my apologies if I've pronounced anything incorrectly so far. We all kind of know Cthulhu from all of the pop culture that's been going around, which has sparked intrigue into a lot of people to start reading H.P. Lovecraft again after so many years. He was an odd man, from what I gather, and from what little I do know of him. But from what it seems like, I mean, I guess maybe he was a man of his time. I'm not exactly certain. By the way, not sure I would have picked this to read again, but whatever. We're all gonna enjoy it, and we're just gonna be like, some of the wording was just at the time, ignore it. Sorry that my nose is like itching me like crazy. It is like super dry in my basement. Boy, but that's the change of season, you know. Stupid state that I live in. Oh my god, like the bottom of my nose feels just like someone like put sand there. We all hate sand. I hate sand. Like Anakin, I hate sand. Except back in sand. Oh my gosh, it keeps auto-adjusting. I gotta figure out how to stop that. Let us continue reading. We're on page 142. For those reading along, question mark. Anyway, the first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Angel bearing a singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design and living alone on their Fleur-de-Lis building near that institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth of known genius but great eccentricity, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself physically hypersensitive, but that state folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually from social visibility, and was now known only to a small group of don't know if that's athletes or aesthetics. We'll go with both aesthetic athletes, because I don't know. From other towns. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. That's so sad. On the occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript. The sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas-relief. He spoke in a dreamy, stilted manner which suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle shewed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast, which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. said, "It is new, indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon." It was then that he began that rambling tale which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory, and won the fevered interest of my uncle. There had been a slight earthquake tremor that night before, the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of great cyclopean cities, of titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister, latent horror. Hieroglyphics had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice, a chaotic sensation which only fancy would transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by the almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. Cthulhu Fatin. Man, I hope I said that right. I don't even know if that's a word that I... that. I don't know what that is. You don't know what that is. None of us know what that is. We're all gonna pretend that we understand, and we're gonna nod, and we're gonna continue with the story after a sip from our tea sponsors. Let's boot segue. I forgot to take the tea bag out, and now it's just brewing, and it's kind of bitter. I made a mistake, and now I'm living with it. And no, I'm not taking the tea bag out because, as I said, I made a mistake, and I'm living with it. Boy, that's bitter. And my ear itches. Those two things aren't correlated or have any causation with each other, but rambling. I can't focus. Okay, let's go. Found it. Page 143. Who knew? This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Angel. There we go. He questioned the sculptor with scientific minuteness and studied with almost frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself working, chilled and clad only in his night clothes. When waking had stolen bewildering over him, my uncle blamed his old age. Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence which he was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread, mystical, or paganly religious body. When Professor Angel became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic lore, he besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of dreams. This poor regular fruit, for after the first interview the manuscript records daily calls of the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice, or intelligence shouting monotonously in enigmatic sense impacts uninscribable safe as gibberish. The two sounds most frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Cthulhu and Relay. manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only in alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch on the case, calling often at the Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind, apparently, was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high, which walked or lumbered about. He had no time fully described this object, but occasional frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream. Sculpture. Reference to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence into lethargy. His temperature, oddly enough, was not greatly above normal, but his whole condition was otherwise such as to suggest true fever, rather than mental disorder. On April 2nd, at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's malady suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home, and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days. But to Professor Angel, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought, so much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seemed, had quickly instituted a prodigious, far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends for whom he could question, without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and the dates of any notable visions of some sort of time past. The reception of his requests seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. The original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes formed a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and business, New England's traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result, though scattered cases of uneasy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague description suggest fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes. And in one case, there is a mention of dread of something abnormal. It was far from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know that panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes. As it was, lacking their original letters, I half suspected the complayer of having asked leading questions or of having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continue to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of the old data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing the veteran scientist. These responses from, as the told us a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed very bizarre things, the intensity of the dreams being immeasurably the stronger during the period of the sculptor's delirium. Over a fourth of those who reported anything reported scenes and have sounds not unlike those which Wilcox had described, and some of the dreams confessed acute fear of the gigantic, nameless thing visible towards the last. One case, which the note describes with emphasis, was very sad. The subject, which was a known architect with leanings toward theosophy and occultism, went violently insane at the date of young Wilcox's seizure, and expired several months later from incessant screamings to be saved from some escaped denizen of hell. Had my uncle referred to those cases by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation. But, as it was, I succeeded in tracing down only a few. All of those, however, bore out the notes in full. I have often wondered if all the objects of the professor's questioning felt as puzzled as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. The press cuttings, as I have intimated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Angel must have employed a cutting bureau, for the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the globe. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leapt from a window after a shocking cry. Here, likewise, a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a theosophist colony as donning white robes en masse for some glorious fulfillment, which never arrives, whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious need of unrest toward the end of March. Voodoo orgies multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. American officers in the Philippines find certain tribes bothersome about this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by hysterical Levantines on the night of March 22nd to the 23rd. The west of Ireland, too, is full of wild rumor and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Ahhh hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. And so numerous are the recorded troubles in insane asylums that only a miracle couldn't have stopped the medical fraternity from noting strange parallelisms and drawing mystified conclusions. A weird bunch of cuttings, all told, and I can, at this stage, scarcely envisage the callous rationalism with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. And thus that ends part 1 of the Call of Cthulhu. And we can continue this in another video. I'm not sure how many parts there are. I think it might be maybe a 30 or 40 page story. It's not very long. somebody was by the window, but it was just my own reflection. I am a child. I'm afraid of everything. I have my own shadow. And now I'm rambling. Well, this started off serious and then it just kind of became a dumpster fire by the very end. So, the little box is so cute. I need to throw it away, but I'm not about to keep a piece of cardboard just because it looks nice. It's so cute. They're like little pyramids. They're like little tops of castles. They're like little spear tips. Step, step, step. So. Ow. Ow. It doesn't hurt that bad, just like scraping. You know? It's only gonna peel off my skin eventually. It's fine. It's fine. My hands look more red than they actually are. Maybe. Okay, well, set it to the side. Well, this concludes my first ever ASMR video, and I hope that you found this relaxing. And join me again to read more Call of Cthulhu. Yeah. And maybe we'll try some different teas. Maybe we'll have like some snacks or something. I mean, it's Girl Scout cookie season. So maybe we'll snack on some Thin Mints and Tagalongs and Dozy Toads and lemonades and Samoas and, well, those are really only the cookies that matter. So, is that the water? I can't tell if that's the water. You know, this house makes too many sounds for my liking. Whatever. Well, I hope that you have a great day, and I hope that you enjoyed this reading of the Call of Cthulhu. In the comments section, tell me what you liked and what you think could be done better, or what you would like to see. I would like to continually improve these for you. I have been listening to ASMR for about 2 years now, and I have found it incredibly relaxing, and I wanted to be able to give back to that community by giving people something to enjoy and listen to. So, let me know what you'd like to see, what kind of videos you would like, or if you find my lipstick too obnoxious, or my voice too obnoxious. I think I sound like I'm drowning half the time. Okay. Have a good night, and dream of oozing walls, and octopus figures with bat-like wings, in ancient scriptures long forgotten, or bunnies. I like bunnies. And kittens. You know, anything that's fuzzy is actually pretty cute, you know. Tigers, bears. The giant creature that lives in your closet with 18 arms and 46 eyes. Actually, no, that one's actually kind of terrifying, but you call him Greg and he smiles and he, like, you know, says, you know,